We are dressed modestly. We don't have any plunging necklines or anything, but there's no denying the enormity of our general chestal situation.
The chest-heavy region there? That's not what happens down here in London.
On the local news, apparently. Cast Iron Brains, a podcast on the eve of the 2024 presidential election. My name is Bob, sitting across the way from my good friend and co-host, that's Abe. How you doing tonight, Abe?
Doing well, Bob.
Yeah. Here we are. Lori's here too. How you doing tonight, Lori?
Yeah, probably not good.
Lori's probably not good. On a Monday, November the 4th, 2024, here we are again, Abe. I realized today and sort of over the weekend, I don't have it in me anymore to write another one of those essays. I thought that I did, and I don't.
No?
I don't know what else to say. I reread my 2016 essay about how the presidential elections are a quadrennial apocalyptic death cult that never fucking delivers, and I said it all then.
Yeah.
There's nothing else to say. And then my 2020 essay was about the Music Man and how, without saying it quite so explicitly, but Trump is Harold Hill of the Music Man, and at the end he should be fucking run out of town on a spike, and instead the rabble is miraculously transformed and he is held up as a hero. And that was all that needed to be said. But somehow here we are again,
right,
in 2024, and we are on the cusp of making this guy the president one more time, and arguably that might be the best case scenario. It's not to my preference that Donald Trump become the president tomorrow or in January or at any other point in the future. But because of the Constitution, and no matter the memery that goes on where they want Trump in 2024 and 28 and 32 and on until forever, that old GIF that went around, Constitution's pretty clear that we would not get yet another Trump term
right
in 2028 if we made him the president this time around. And so because
they had the chance to not.
The good Lord is not going to do us the favor anytime soon of calling the Donald home and ridding us of his presence here on the earth. He seems, unlike his brother who drank himself to death, his father was a very long-lived man. This is a long-lived bunch. They got good genes, as Trump likes to say. He's not going anywhere, despite the apparent lack of a healthy lifestyle that he lives. So maybe the most expedient way to be done with the trumpeting is to just give him 4 more years and let him be the television president again, as the Republicans do what Republicans do, largely, for the next 4 years, and then we can move on after then.
So you're saying it's preferable to have him go at it one more time rather than just him lose? Because, it's certain that he wouldn't run again if he won, right? I mean, there's a law against that, right?
Right.
But there's also a very high likelihood, you can't rule it out, but a very high likelihood that an 82-year-old Trump would not be running in 28. Right?
I disagree that that's a high likelihood.
It is a very high, 82 running.
He will not cease running. He took basically a year off, sort of, after January 6th. He sort of meekly leaves office, and then I guess he took a couple of years off. But 18 to 22, not a big difference. 38 to 42, not that big a difference. 78 to 82, the wheels start to come off. He's already... For most people, what difference does that make if the wheels start to come off? He got, in 2016, what did he receive? 70 million votes, something like that?
It was 60-something, and then 70-something.
69 million votes. In 2020, he increased that number to 75 million votes, which is a remarkable fact. He's going to increase that number again. I'll ask a specific version of this question in a few minutes here. But he will have, in 3 consecutive presidential elections, increased his vote total, and in
Right.
all likelihood, his vote share. His share is likely to increase as well this time, even if it
Right.
doesn't end up putting him over the top. What is the argument? Certainly, the Republicans can't raise an argument as
Well,
to
they
why
can.
he
You've
should.
now lost back to back, right? I mean, like, what's the like? It's not like we're doing
But
great
more
with
people
you.
continue to support him, right?
Right, because
And
more
he is-
people are voting overall, right? So, like, I think in 2016 it was 65 Hillary, 62 Trump.
Oh, is
And
that
then
all it was? 65, 62?
And then it was 81-75 or something like that, 74-75. So, like, and I think he took, like, great credit for, like, claiming that his 75 million was the most a sitting president has received, which is still true, right? Like,
Right. The most
it's still-
any sitting president has ever received was 75 million votes. The
And it'll be
problem
true
there
at-
being that it's
Right.
significantly fewer
less,
votes than
right.
his opponent.
But it will still be true after this run because neither of them are sitting presidents, right? So no matter what the number is this year, it will still be a Trump record, at least through 28.
Right. But no, I think there's zero question whatsoever that he's going to run again in 4 years if he is
No,
not
I think
the president
if he
this time.
if he loses, he's done. I think there's just no. I don't see it.
Who decides that he's done? The American people will decide that
I
he's
think
done,
people
or he will
just be-
decide that he's done.
Well, first of all, if he were to lose, then he's already like the people that he's been telling to show up did not show up, right? That's why he lost, right? Like, I mean, in
Well,
the
he
scenario,
will have lost because of, in all likelihood, between 40 and 80,000 votes across 2 or 3 or 5 states at the very
Right.
most. It will
Right.
not be because he was blown out of the water. And
Right,
like,
yeah.
even best case scenario, if everything breaks for Harris tomorrow, and it is something like an electoral college landslide, which probably looks at like, I don't know, 330 is probably what we would
like the Obama numbers, like
Right, like 330
340.
we would consider a massive landslide in the current environment. It's not really a landslide, but we would have
Right.
to consider it something like a landslide if she were to manage to get up to over 330 electoral votes. He will still have, again, he will have acquired more votes in 2024 than he acquired in 2020, and more than he acquired in 2016, certainly. And he will have an ongoing stranglehold on the GOP. Like, it's not like his hold on these people is going to be any less. It's not like he's going to acknowledge that she won fair and square and it's time for me to take my ball and go home either.
Right.
So, like, I just don't see how anything short of a Trump victory is going to put it, and then barring serious health problems up to and including his natural death, those are the only things that stand in the way of him running for and receiving the Republican nomination in 2028.
Right, and if he were, he would still lose, right? If he's going to lose in 24 in the general, he's going to lose in 28. I mean, even if he were to capture, and again, I think that's a very low chance.
Things would
if he
have
were
to be real bad for Kamala, I would
Right.
say, over the course of the next 4 years for
Right.
him to somehow rehabilitate himself enough to seem like the better option. But to be fair, we are currently, as we sit here on Monday night before the election, how many times have we thought that he was dead and never coming back? So many times before we have thought, that's it, that's the end. He's done the thing that is going to make it impossible for him to be the president or stay in national politics moving forward. And it's never the thing. And losing doesn't matter. He's a relentless loser, to borrow a phrase from Ralph Nader. This is not something that is new. His loss here would not be new or different from before. It would just be more of the same. So I don't know why we would expect that he would be going anywhere.
So what I find interesting, I live down here in Georgia, and over the weekend in the family group chat, everybody was exchanging like all the spam messages we're getting, like by mail, by text, and as we were discussing this, I got like a text message over the weekend. And I'm going to share it with you. You know, down here in Georgia, there was this famous ruling or law that passed that said that you can't pass out water bottles or food at as people are waiting to vote in line. However, there seems to be some sort of loophole. I got a text message saying, I guess to drum up interest in voting, they said, "Hey, you live at this location, my address, and like your polling location will have a DJ spinning music. So come and vote, and you'll hear some music." Like, I don't know who that's for. Like, who is the voter who's like on the fence, and then like, oh shit, they're playing music.
Oh, there's going to be a fucking party? How can I
There
miss a
might be
party?
one person, and that could make the difference.
Right, and I wonder if this proves successful, will there be another law in Georgia to say no music either?
No
Unless you're playing-
DJs at the
just-
polling places.
It's just a weird. It just seems like you
No
must have a
music,
very
no music at polling places except for bearded men, bearded blue-collar signaling men strumming a guitar by themselves. And that is it. That's the only music permitted outside of Georgia polling places.
It's a damn shame what the world's gotten to for people like me, people like you.
They must have a very low opinion of the person who they're sending this out to. Like, who would be drawn up, who would want to come to vote just because of that? It just seems kind of weird.
I don't know what lists I'm on, but I get Trump fundraising texts every single day, and I get Kamala come vote for me texts every single day. So I'm getting it from both ends here in Virginia.
Similar on my end, except it's the way that I'm getting this information. Texts are almost always like Harris related, right? But a lot of my mail are like almost all Trump. And before RFK dropped out, a lot of RFK, I don't know what list I'm on, but for actual physical mail, it's almost always like some Georgia Republican or Trump whatever for America, some goofy thing like that.
How about Trump saying that he's going to make RFK Jr. like the health czar or whatever the fuck? He's going to put him in charge of the CDC and the NHS. Seems
It's
bad.
going to be great. Yeah, what was his thing? Like his
That's the
like,
thing that's bad.
I mean, among the ways that Trump can actually have a profoundly negative real world impact on us outside of the unpleasant media environment we'd all be living in because of it, outside of probably the worst consequence of it, speaking strictly selfishly, the worst consequence of it almost certainly being how annoying the leftists will be over the course of the next few years. What we experienced as a result of the 2016 election was the awakening, for lack of a better term, and it has been mercifully easier to deal with since Joe Biden became the president. Right, like it shuts up a bunch of the rabble rousers on the left when there's somebody something like a fellow traveler in the White House. But when the Trump emergency takes back over and we have whatever the next evolution of the pink pussy hat march on Washington is, which is only going to be more obnoxious the next time around, I'm sure. Like the left's reaction to a second Trump term it's as good a reason as any to vote for Kamala Harris, strictly from a selfish perspective in terms of like having to deal with the discourse and the way that people are going to behave in like the next version of the resistance is not going to be as pleasant as the first version was. And you'll recall that culminated with the insanity of 2020. And like that wasn't very pleasant the first go round. So just as a means of keeping the left at bay in terms of their obnoxiousness, it would be nice to have Harris up there.
Right. And you know, Trump's win is still up in the air, but what we know for sure, at least I know for sure, the Senate will flip, right? And so that's the branch, or that's the body that's going to confirm whomever Trump sends, right? So like if Trump were to win, he would have like, what was it, Harriet Myers? Who was that one that George Bush tried to nominate for the Supreme Court? Like he'll have
Harriet
like
Myers.
Worse candidates than her, and they'll just kind of rubber stamp confirm them, right? Like what's to stop? I mean, because like the Senate will be controlled by the Republicans.
Also,
and if Trump wins,
wouldn't you rather have, like, if you're basically anyone, wouldn't you rather have Harriet Myers than what we ended up with? Which she got pulled back in favor of John
was it
Roberts.
Scalia or Roberts? What was the sequence
Because
of
I think that
events?
Roberts, because it happened very quickly or something, right? So all of a sudden he was going to get to nominate a chief as well. And
Yeah.
so Myers comes back and Roberts becomes the nominee for chief, which was not the plan for Myers initially. And then I think the Myers one ends up becoming Alito after
okay.
the Roberts
Alito's
thing
the guy.
gets through. So
Okay.
like, would you rather have Harriet Myers,
That's true.
somewhat unqualified, something of an ideologue maybe, or fucking Sam Alito for the last 20 years? And I think most
That's a
people
good-
would say.
yeah. But at least, it's important to have somebody that's qualified, right? So, like, at that
I
base
don't know.
level.
One of my favorite things about the Supreme Court is that there are no qualifications necessary
That's
whatsoever.
true,
You don't have to be a lawyer, don't have to be a judge, don't have to be anything. You just have to be nominated by the president and then confirmed by the Senate.
But there must be some unwritten standard, right? Because the reaction was pretty swift. Like, I remember when that story, like when he was.
I don't know. My high school poli-sci teacher insisted, made all of us pledge that if we were to ever become president, that we would nominate her.
It's fucked up.
A poli-sci teacher in a high school who had a bachelor's from. The most achievement that she had academically was a bachelor's degree from somewhere, probably.
Yeah.
And then she made us all say that if we ever became president, we would nominate her as a Supreme Court justice, which I happily did. She was a great lady. I would have been. She's probably a bit more liberal than my sensibilities would be pleased with, but she was a wonderful person.
I wonder if any of your classmates are like in the ranks now, like in the political ranks. Maybe they'll become president one day.
Yeah. I've had this thought that I sort of started off with about how maybe it would be ultimately better if Trump just won outright tomorrow.
No, you're wrong.
I'm trying to think of any upside. I don't see it.
Here are the upsides as I see them. One, because you disagree with my assessment that that he would run again in 28. I think you're crazy. I think he's
going to be 82. Oh, into 82.
I don't care. He's probably going to live into his mid-90s. Like, what are we talking about?
Yeah. Jimmy Carter's still alive, too. That doesn't mean he can... what do you mean? Like, just because you're alive physically doesn't mean you're competent to do anything. He's not going to run in...
I don't think he was competent in 2015. What difference does that make? He's going to run. He doesn't have the ability to say, oh, yeah, I just won't do that anymore.
Right.
And nobody around him tells him no. And his political life is his entire life now. Like, he's going to continue raising money. He's going to continue imagining himself to be an important person in American politics. It doesn't matter. I don't want to have that conversation again. Right. So that's one way. We preclude him from running again in 2028. And yeah, it's a steep price to pay to make him the president. The other way, and this is more of the abused girlfriend sort of reaction to the whole Trump thing than anything else probably, but if he wins outright, I think that the chance of great social upheaval in a awful, violent way is reduced relative to him losing.
Reduced? How would it be reduced?
He's...
Because I saw what happened when he won in 2016.
Yeah, it was a bad day.
It was deranging, but it wasn't as deranging as when he lost in 2020 and he pretended like he had won, and then they had this whole big storming of the Capitol thing.
Yeah, but then that ended, and he wasn't president.
Yeah. My feeling is that if he loses, which we'll get into in a minute how plausible I think that is, but if he loses by anything that is close, and the only thing that would surprise me about tomorrow is definitive results either way, right? Like the polls are all pointing to this whole thing being remarkably close, and I would be surprised, maybe not shocked, but I would be surprised if this turns out to be something that's such a definitive result that not even the Trump true believers can say it was stolen from us, right? Like they will insist probably by 11:30 Eastern tomorrow night, no matter what the result is, that they've won, and that any other outcome is just the result of a theft. And I don't like that will be like there's still I forget what the numbers are off the top of my head, but like a third or more of Republicans, like in my head it's 40%, but maybe it's not that high, believe that the 2020 election was stolen, right? Like they still that's sort of a baseline thing in their head is they don't believe that we got a true and fair outcome in 2020. It is so thoroughly destabilizing to our entire system if that number creeps up further, right? If it goes up even higher, like what and like arguably the entire Trump project is about destabilizing our institutions, about calling into question the fairness of any of a number of different American institutions, and a close Trump loss that not that he can plausibly say was stolen from him. I don't believe that there are plausible ways in which this election is going to or can be stolen from Donald Trump, but that he will insist the election was stolen is there's zero doubt in my mind, right? And so given that fact, and given that the majority of his supporters are likely to say, yes, we agree, this was stolen, that allows for such a tremendous amount of potential social unrest that I just don't want any part of it. Like it sounds terrible having to deal with that fact and imagining where he's talking now about how he and Mike Johnson have a plan for January if something doesn't go exactly right. Like what the fuck is he even talking about?
Right.
And it's not entirely clear. But I don't want any part of that. I would almost rather him just be made the fucking president again so that we can take our medicine and be done with it. I know that's fucking crazy.
But aren't you almost encouraging bad behavior? They're behaving badly, so just give them what they want.
Of course.
So,
yes, absolutely. I am doing that. But I think it in some way, and I hope that this is not a widespread
I'm not worried about Bob's voice here.
belief among people. And yeah, I'm not worried about me spreading this as some sort of like a viral disease. But like, if I'm being honest about my assessment of the situation, I think it is more likely that there is social unrest and unpleasantness in the event of a close Trump loss than in the event of a close Harris loss. Like that seems obvious to me. It doesn't mean that there's not going to be gnashing of teeth and rending of garments and a great deal of unpleasantness in the way that we consume things, right? Like out there in the content mill, there will be plenty of that. But in terms of like real world violence, I think it's less likely if Harris loses than if Trump does.
Right, but the likelihood... Okay, so I think we could rule out any landslide in either direction. A close Harris defeat, she'll call and concede. A close Trump defeat, he will pretend he won, and people will just move on. Like, there's not going to be any sort of, like... I don't expect there to be any sort of, like... action happening after the event.
Well, of course you
Even
don't.
if there
nobody
is.
expects. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition.
Well, I didn't expect a kind of Spanish Inquisition. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. Our chief weapon is surprise. Surprise and fear. Fear and surprise. Our two weapons are fear and surprise.
Nobody expects January 6th either,
but
right?
that's even if it is, it's worth a bad day or few days to not have him be president. Like, I'll take the social unrest for a little while.
This is 2 a.m. on election night. You know, the next morning, election night. Donald Trump starts a press conference, and this
This
about
was the last one? What are you talking
2020,
about?
election night 2020. This is what he said 7 minutes or so into his press conference on election night 2020.
This is a fraud on the American public. This is an embarrassment to our country. We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election. We did win this election. So our goal now is to ensure the integrity for the good of this nation. This is a very big moment. This is a major fraud in our nation. We want the law to be used in a proper manner. So we'll be going to the U.S. Supreme Court. We want all voting to stop. We don't want them to find any ballots at 4 o'clock in the morning and add them to the list, okay? It's a very sad moment. To me, this is a very sad moment, and we will win this, and as far as I'm concerned, we already have won it.
I remember watching that and getting chills because
We were at Disney World, right?
Yeah,
We should be there now.
I didn't know what it meant exactly, but the next few months after that and everything that has followed since then suggest that he meant what he said, right? That he was not going to take the results of that election lying down, and they had to fight in order to save the country in their formulation of things, disregarding the fact that nearly 82 million people voted to throw the bums out. I don't think there's any reason to expect any other reaction to the results on Tuesday, the 5th of November, this time around, if things don't go in his direction. And in fact, I'm going to go ahead and give you the first over-under of the night, Abe.
Yes.
I want you to tell me, over-under 11:30 p.m., does Donald Trump declare that he won the election and or that a fraud has taken place? That was 2 a.m. in 2020. Are we going over or under 11:30 p.m. Eastern for Trump to declare
So
that
that's
he won the thing? Oh, sorry. I had actually set the number at 12:30 a.m. Eastern.
okay. So I'm going to say over that. The tricky thing about the sequence of events on Tuesday night, from what I gather, the states of Georgia and North Carolina will be in a pretty good position by the 11 o'clock hour to determine like which direction it's going. They'll be in the 90th percentile as far as the count. And so like
Also, and you can disabuse me of this, shouldn't we expect something of a blue mirage in Georgia that slowly is eaten into by Republican counties coming in as the night goes on, or polling precincts coming in as the night goes on?
Yeah, so we'll have like an opposite of what happened in 2020 where there was this red mirage because like they counted the day of voters and all the mail stuff was counted later. So like it started off red and then it slowly became blue. It'll be the opposite this time.
The funny meme of the guy catching up in football.
Yep. So yeah, so that's what's going to happen. So the reason why I still think it'll be over, but like if Trump wins those two, like if he were to win Georgia and North Carolina, then maybe he'll try to get ahead of the Pennsylvania thing, like, oh, we're winning, and maybe he'll announce before 12:30. But I think it'll be a split decision there, and I think it will be after 12:30 when he starts to make a case for himself.
So you think that Georgia and North Carolina will not go together in this election?
It just feels like it'll be like I don't know if it's Georgia or not. I'm thinking Georgia is a better chance for Harris, and North Carolina is a better chance for Trump. But if it goes both Trump, then he's in good shape. If it goes both Harris, then he's dead, and basically he's done. If he loses those two states, then he's done.
Right.
Even though the number doesn't get to 270.
Mathematically not, but if you're going to lose North Carolina and Georgia, the chances that you are going to break through the blue wall in the Great Lakes region is unlikely, certainly.
Right.
So at some point in the summer, I don't remember when, there was a PBS Marist poll that came out that had Joe Biden. It must have been late spring because Biden was still the option there. And I think, I don't remember off the top of my head, but I think that Biden was down double digits in independents. And I said, like, goose is cooked. The election is over. Yeah. If you go back and you look at how independents voted in every election in our lifetimes and before, I can find numbers going back to 1976. Basically, a Republican has won the presidency while losing independents once, I think. It was in 2004. Kerry won independents +2, and Bush ends up winning that election despite that fact.
Right.
And that's a weird one in part also because that whole election comes down to Ohio, that if Ohio had flipped, then we would have had Kerry instead of Bush. But in 1976, Ford +4, he loses to Carter. In 1980, Reagan and 84, +25, +28 among independents. And 88, Bush +14, Clinton +6, Clinton +7 in 92 and 96. George W. Bush +2 in 2000, and then Kerry in 2004, and then Obama +8. 2012 is a weird outlier year in terms of this because Romney actually won independents +5. And I wonder how much of that is a result of the popularity of Barack Obama as a figure allowed more people to come into the tent of calling themselves a Democrat at that time. And so to continue to insist that you're an independent means that you're more likely to lean away from Barack Obama because, like, why would you call yourself an independent if you're an Obama supporter? Like, Obama is cool and he's a Democrat. I'm just going to call myself a Democrat now. So I wonder if that was that effect in 2012. And then Trump wins independents +4 in 2016, and Biden wins independents +13 in 2020. The reason that I have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow, more than anything else, I had this big my silly model in 2020. I think I just went and just gave 5 points to Donald Trump everywhere. I looked at all of the polls and I was like, just throw 5 points at Donald Trump and then see what the result is. And I still came up with Joe Biden is going to win despite that fact. my model this time around is just find where the independents are and see what the story is. The latest polls, these are all within the last week or two that I could find, major national polls of all voters. The Marist poll came out this week, Trump +5. NBC News poll comes out this week, Harris +8. ABC News poll comes out this week, Harris +5. And there's an Emerson poll that came out within the last week or two that had Trump +6. So,
yeah, mixed message. That's remarkable.
Right. Nobody fucking knows where the independents are coming into this week. There's people are talking about a vibe shift over the course of the last few days, that things are moving towards Harris in a generalized sort of way for whatever reason. But that is not reflected in any of the polling that I could find.
So what's interesting about 2012, I did not know about this independent, the plus minus for Romney. Somebody else was mentioning, I saw online, that 2012 was a kind of a weird year altogether, because like the final Real Clear Politics average had Obama by less than a point, 0.7, and it turned out he won by close to 4 points, right? Basically, for some reason, they underestimated Obama, and he ended up winning comfortably at the end.
Right, and the Romney people were convinced that they were going to win that election. They were genuinely surprised when they lost. And it wasn't out of hubris. It was because it seemed like they had all of the momentum, they were on the right track, and Obama was a much reduced figure in the public's eye. He lost millions of votes. I don't have the totals directly in front of me. But
did, Romney?
No, Obama did. From 2008 to 2012, his vote total was greatly reduced.
Oh, yeah.
And part of the argument that you can make about whether or not you consider Barack Obama a failure in a political sense is that not only did he lose a great deal of support from his first election to his second, but also the national prospects for the Democratic Party in the time that he was the head of the ticket went from being quite profoundly good to being quite terrible as his presidency wore on. Right, like there's some number where like thousands and thousands of Democrats lost elections from 2009 onwards.
Well, especially 2010. I mean, 2010 was a bloodbath year, the Tea Party movement. But I always think, like, if you're a president and you get 50+1% of the vote in back-to-back elections, that is a successful campaign run. I think 2008 was just like an outlier year because there was just all of this momentum towards him. There was that bad economic collapse. So like the stars aligned for him to win Indiana, for instance, in 2008. And so 2012 was more of a normal win. You can't downplay the cult of personality effect around Barack Obama in 2008 that fucking weirded me out so much. Right, the hope and change. Yeah, it was the whole thing. Yeah, but people like that sort of candidate. They this guy can change it, even though that's not how it works. Also, if you get the other side to complete an autopsy of your party afterwards, you did pretty good, right? So in 2013, they didn't follow the autopsy results, right? They just went towards Trump.
But the reason the autopsy happened is because they were genuinely shocked by the results, right? Like they had to have that come to Jesus moment because they were ready to throw a fucking party on election night 2012.
I wonder if there was a Bob in the room and they saw that Romney +5, like, boss, this is guaranteed. This number never fails. You'll be in the White House. Might as well get our transition team going because this independent number never fails, although it failed in 2004. I think
it failed in 2004, it failed in 1976, and it failed in 2012. But the only way that it's really failed in my mind is because what's interesting to me is that the Republican never wins without the support of independents, and the only exception to that is 2004.
It's like they're Ohio. Republicans don't win without Ohio. And I guess they don't win without independence, but
they need and it's because for forever basically, the Republicans are a smaller party than the Democrats are. Right. There are just generally fewer Republicans than there are Democrats. Therefore, they cannot afford to not win independents and expect to win. And without having a handle on who's actually ahead among independents, I don't know how anyone can make any claims about what's going to happen tomorrow. I mean, Trump +5, Harris +8, Harris +5, Trump +6 tells me absolutely nothing about where people actually are. And again, I can't imagine, like I said in 2012 about how like why would someone claim to be an independent and also support Barack Obama? Like, it's cool to like Barack Obama. I might as well call myself a Democrat. Now it's like, who the fuck is going to support Donald Trump and call themselves an independent? Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, I mean, and then you go and you watch him talking at some point in the last week. Who knows? He's been giving 1 million. He's given 3 fucking rallies a day at this point, so I don't have any idea where he was. But he was like pissing on Mitch McConnell's grave prematurely, talking about how we got to get rid of that Mitch McConnell. Can you believe that guy endorsed me? That must have been a real rough day for old Mitch at the McConnell household that day when he endorsed me. What was he thinking?
Hopefully we get rid of Mitch McConnell pretty soon because he helped him. That guy. Can you believe he endorsed me? Can you? Boy, that must have been a painful day in his life. Every time I think of it, he didn't have to do that. He provided the necessary votes. What a disgrace.
What's interesting, there's been all this talk about these polls. They're all like coming together. They're all just kind of copying each other. They're weighing it in such a way that the numbers come out similar. They call it herding. But when you look at the specific demos, there's not a lot of herding. I mean, there are 4 polls that you just showed, 2 of them plus 5 or 6 towards Trump. The other ones are like 6 to 8 towards Harris. So it's weird when you like dig deeper beyond just the top line numbers. The numbers are like everywhere. Like, oh, Harris is like hemorrhaging black support here, or she's gaining with white males. Like, it's just random numbers are being just published, and I don't know what's going on. This is like the very weird year when it comes to polling, when you try to dig in and like look at, okay, where are the independents at, or where are the women at, or where it's just like all over the place.
Yeah, and I'm largely convinced by what Nate Silver has been saying over the last few days about the herding effect, where he's that's HERDING.
I'm herding.
That these polling outfits have become sort of prisoners of the polling averages that they see out there in the world. So if Emerson has a poll that shows Harris plus 10, they're more likely to just throw that result away and try again the next day,
right? Because
it doesn't look. They don't want to come out with a Harris plus 10 when everybody else is showing that this thing is neck and neck, and so they look at what 538 averages are. They look at the Real Clear averages and they say, no, we need to only publish results that are in line with what everyone else is saying, because as everyone knows, the averages are going to be more accurate than any one individual poll. So we need to find individual polls that more align with the averages, which of course makes the averages.
Just don't do polls.
Right, it makes the averages useless as a mechanism for determining what's going on in the world, because it's like saying that it's like giving somebody who's guessing how many jelly beans are in a jar what everyone else has guessed so far, and then allowing 1,000 people to guess, based on the fact that you've already had 1,000 people guess, and you've fed that information back into this new group of people who are now going to make an informed so-called guess based on what everyone else has said. Right. But now what you've done is you've ruined the data set entirely, because now we can't rely on the wisdom of crowds.
Right. You should allow for the polls to come out whatever they are, and then the averaging is what's going to get you to an accurate picture. But if you're already doing the averaging before you release the numbers, then it's pointless.
Right, which is what makes a poll like what came out from Iowa over the weekend. The Ann Seltzer is a famous pollster. She's been very accurate in the last couple of elections. And in her model, she does not try to model the electorate based on last time out, apparently. That's one of the things that separates her from some of these other pollsters, where they take what happened 4 years ago and they say, this can teach us about what the electorate is going to look like this next time around. So a lot of pollsters are sort of attempting to fight the next war based on the lessons of the last war, and that's no way to win a war, and it's no way to figure out who's going to vote the next time out either, because the electorate changes every single time out. She apparently is better about that than a lot of pollsters are, and she came out with a poll that had Harris up 3 in Iowa, which is a total outlier from everything else that has been seen in Iowa and in any other red state, certainly, and had everybody freaking out over the weekend, and probably contributed to the vibe shift that people are talking about out there in Harris's direction. A result in Iowa that is within a couple of points would be fairly shocking, but not unprecedented in terms of flipping from one state to the next. I think that, again, bad job by me. I think he won Iowa by 7 or 8 points last time around.
Like 52-45, something like that, yeah.
And a result that had it 50-50 or with Harris squeaking out a win would be quite something. You mentioned earlier Indiana. Indiana went plus, I think it was nearly a 20-point swing from one election to the next. So it wasn't quite that much, but it was in the high teens. And so it's not completely insane to imagine that a state in a short amount of time can have a double-digit flip like that. But it would be surprising just given what we know about Iowa and how they voted for Trump the last 2 times out. That apparently the idea here is that the 6-week abortion ban that went into effect over the summer has enraged the Iowa women, and they're going to come out and make their voices heard in a way that will surprise us, apparently. It also, but if that's the reason for this potential shift, then that only speaks to Iowa's 6 electoral votes. It does not speak to a larger trend throughout the Republican Party.
I think it's great that they released the poll, but there isn't any chance that Iowa flips. It's going to be a Trump won state. It's kind of like sometimes it'll be like earlier this year, there was some number that came out showing Virginia was a close race or New Hampshire or whatever. All of those states will just kind of fall along the predictable lines. The margins may be whatever, but I don't think Iowa is going to flip. And if it did flip, it'd be, I know you're saying that this is an isolated thing, it would be a bad sign.
It would be a bad sign for Trump, but again, I wouldn't be surprised if he hangs on to the Sun Belt, if he hangs on to Georgia, North Carolina, Arizona, and all of that. Iowa doesn't matter. Right? I think it's perfectly plausible to me that he flips, that Iowa flips, and that doesn't actually speak to anything else going on throughout the rest of the country. That it could be a weird result that ultimately doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I don't know. What's weird is, you were showing the Independents plus, I think it was the Marist poll. That poll overall had, I think, Harris up by 4. So it's weird that not the poll that has Harris up with Independents, the poll that had Trump up by 5 among Independents, the overall number is Harris plus 4. So, what is it that, are they weighing Independents to, a very small, insignificant amount? Right.
That tells me that they're doing something with the number there to get to Harris plus 4. That they are imagining an electorate that must be dramatically different than what the underlying number says. Because, again, like you're saying, I don't know how you get from Trump wins Independents plus 5 to Harris wins overall plus 4. Those numbers don't really add up.
Right. The plus 4 Harris makes more sense where she's up with Independents, but not this way. I think on the other side of this, I don't know, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, whenever this is all settled, and maybe it'll take longer for all the numbers to settle. We'll look back at these polls, and they're not going to make any sense. Whatever happens, it's just not going to make any sense.
Yeah.
Well, of course not. None of them make sense. Literally, no matter what happens, the polls don't make sense. Why are they still polling?
In order for them to not make sense, though, we're going to have a definitive result, right? One way or the other. Because if
when you say definitive, or you mean not close?
What I mean is
we could just never know.
What Nate Silver has been talking about.
Have the vice president go next.
These are numbers off the top of my head, but he's saying something like, in order for all of these 7 battleground states to all be within 0.1 of a percentage point, as all of these polls indicate that they are, it would be like a 1 in 250 million chance, right? It's functionally mathematically possible, but essentially unlikely to ever occur in the real world that all of these that the results on Tuesday are going to be as close as the polling averages and the individual polls are insisting that they are. Because when you say that a dozen different polls of these 6 or 7 different states are all pointing to 49.1 to 48.9 or something like that, right?
Yeah.
It's all within this tiny little range of outcomes. Yeah. If those are all correct and that is how things come out, that would be a 1 in a billion fucking chance, basically. In order for the polls to prove themselves to be correct, we're going to have to end up in an eventuality that is very unlikely to happen in the real world.
that pretty much happened in 2020, though. I mean, Georgia by a hair, Arizona by a hair, like Michigan, Pennsylvania. I mean, Michigan was maybe a couple points, but like they were all very close. North Carolina was pretty close, like 70,000. Like they were all fairly close, right? So like this number that Dave Silver spits out, like, I mean, it could still be the same thing. It could be a repeat of 2020 where over the course of all the states, you have a 7 million vote gap, but you have like 10,000 or 11,000 in Arizona, same in Georgia, 70,000 in North Carolina. Like these are razor thin margins, right?
Yeah.
So,
I don't want to get into terribly specific predictions, but I would guess that the gap is going to be significantly closer than it was in 2020. That
even the national number or the state by state number, because you can't get any closer than that. You can't get
No. The overall popular vote is going to
gotcha.
be significantly closer than the 6.5 or 7 million votes that separated Biden and Trump in 2020. It will be a much smaller number than that.
Closer
He's
to
going to get his greatest. I mean, based on every fucking poll that you can look at, he might approach like 48+% of the vote, and like she's going to need to outperform. I don't know if she needs to outperform the number of votes that Biden managed to rack up in order to guarantee an electoral college victory, because again, she can hemorrhage a ton of votes in a ton of big time blue states and not worry about it, right? Like she could lose. She's not going to lose California. She's not going to lose New York. She's not going to lose any of a number of other large states, but she could reduce, like he could make large inroads in those states, and it won't matter to the electoral college prospects, and it could significantly impact the popular vote total.
That's true, but there's no evidence that he's making inroads in those states either, right? So it
well,
could
sure,
happen.
if he's making inroads among the demographic groups that he's alleged to be making inroads in, then New York and California have plenty of those young Hispanics and young black men who, if they can get to the polls, are going to make a difference in terms of his totals.
Right, but that would, like, low propensity voters in a already decided state are going to show up to vote. Like, is that the thinking? Like, I mean, those votes are out there, but why would they show up in California and New York when it doesn't matter?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not in huge numbers, but in numbers enough to make this a closer contest in the popular vote than it was in 2020.
What's interesting is that a lot of assumptions are being made about, like, well, there are already more than 50% of the 2020 total have already voted, right? So we're already past the 50% mark. And based on that, we're expecting a record turnout. But, like, some of those people that voted early could be
mail-in
election
voting
day.
being down 40% or something, right? Like this time around.
But that makes sense, though. That makes sense because, like, why do you
people
need
were
to mail it?
terrified to go gather in a small confined space in 2020, right? So it does
basically,
make sense.
like, the people that voted on election day may have, I could have voted on a Saturday. I'll do that. So, like, it's hard to tell. Maybe in future years we can look back at 24 and make comparisons, but it's hard to make comparisons to 2020 because that was such a weird year, right? So, like, I think we'll probably break the record from 2020, but it won't be by much. I don't think it'll be like this, like, ridiculous increase.
All right, so over under 81 million votes for Harris. That was the number that Joe Biden got. Will she go over or under the total from 2020?
Over.
You think she's going over 81 million?
Yeah.
We expect the electorate to grow by some 8 or 10 million, I think, this time, right? Like
Why?
Just because there are more people who can vote now than there were in 2020. And as it turns out, people are motivated to vote. And given the fact that some 75 or 85 million people have already done so before Election Day.
What was it, 158? I think 158 million voted in 2020 or something around there.
Right.
So this should be over 160. Easy.
Right. And you're going to give her over 81. I set the over-under for Trump at 80 million votes because I think that he's definitely going over the 75 number that he got in 2020. Do you think he's going over or under 80 million votes?
He's going over also. It looks like an 86 to 82 kind of thing. Like,
that's the number. You got this figured out. Dude. 86 to 82.
Yeah.
All right, so Abe's 3 over-unders on the night. We've got Trump declares victory and or fraud after 12:30 a.m. Wednesday morning Eastern.
Yeah, he needs to let the blue mirage process, and then as it's going the other way, then he can declare overnight.
You've got Harris over 81 million votes and Trump over 80 million votes. We won't know the answers to the over-unders until the end of the month at the earliest.
Yeah, that's
California
true.
takes
Yeah.
fucking forever, for example, to count all of their votes. New York isn't much faster. So there's big states that come in late, not in terms of answering who won and who didn't win, but
Right.
but vote totals certainly. I listened to the Biffler's election preview episode with a great deal of personal pain. I suffered through that. And it was
I thought
funny.
we talked about that already.
We did. But we didn't talk about what Abe's predictions for tomorrow night were. And I wanted to give you the chance to speak to the Cast Iron Brains audience, Abe, about what you expect to happen tomorrow night.
So in 2016, there are these 7 battleground states, the 3 up north, and then the Sun Belt states. It was Trump won 6 out of those 7. He lost Nevada. And then in 2020, Biden won 6 out of those 7. He lost North Carolina. I'm anticipating in 2024, Harris is going to win 6 out of 7. I'm still not sure what that loss is. It could either be a repeat, North Carolina again, or Arizona. Like one of those 2 states. I don't know much about what's going on over there in Arizona, but like one of those 2 states, I expect.
Arizona and North Carolina are interesting because Trump that's probably his strongest among the battlegrounds. According to most polls that I've seen, he's most likely to win that one. Like it's been a pretty steady +2 or so relative to the other states where it hovers right around a coin flip.
Right.
But Kari Lake is the Senate nominee there, who's going to fail to become the senator in all likelihood. So there's going to be a slight ticket splitting phenomenon that goes on in Arizona. Maybe Trump can drag her across the finish line if he has a particularly good night. And it seems unlikely that she is going to harm his electoral prospects in any meaningful way out there. But she's unlikely to win while he is slightly likely to win. And then on the North Carolina end, it doesn't look like the Republican nominee for governor down there has any chance whatsoever
Mark Robinson,
of winning. And the question then becomes, will there be enough of a non-ticket splitting phenomenon that goes on there where maybe the enthusiasm to not vote for the maniac gubernatorial candidate ends up harming Donald Trump in a way that Harris can sneak through and win the state. I find that unlikely. I think North Carolina is still something of a dream here, and it takes a more special candidate than Joe Biden or Hillary Clinton or Kamala Harris to turn the state blue.
Typically the top of the ticket can drag down the down ballot tickets. It usually doesn't go the other way, right? But if it did, it would happen in those 2 states. Like the governor very weak, or the candidate for governor in North Carolina is very weak, and then the senator the candidate in Arizona is very weak. The other thing about Arizona that's weird, usually when you have the governorship and the 2 Senate spots filled by one party, that's usually a good sign for the presidential election. And Arizona is all blue. Right? Well, I mean, Kristen Sinema is whatever, but
Right.
She'll be replaced by somebody who will be a Democrat. So, I don't know what's going on over there. I don't know if people have moved since then. Are there Democrats that are into Trump? Because if you had enough people to vote for those 2 senators and for the governor, it would stand to reason that they would vote for Harris. But it's a weird state, so I'm not sure.
Well, candidate quality matters, right? I mean, Kari Lake.
Well, obviously it doesn't matter. I mean, Trump is doing well, right?
Well, Trump being the turd in the punch bowl, the outlier to every possible politics rule, yes. But candidate quality matters in terms of the Senate, and you can look no further than Georgia and Arizona in terms of the Senate results there, despite what should be, you would think, relatively safe spots for Republicans to win elections. I mean, Brian Kemp is an incredibly popular Republican governor there as far as that goes. Yes, Lori?
The Washington football team won their last home game, which is good for the Kamala people.
Right. I think that got screwed up.
It got screwed. It's
like with the independence thing, right?
17 out of 21 times it's been right.
Yeah, it's like the independent thing. Yeah, it's as consistent as that.
Yeah. Well, don't look at right track, wrong track numbers if you want. I mean, if 70% of the country thinks that we're on the wrong track, the incumbent party doesn't win anything ever. So.
Yeah, but I'm looking at the Washington football team.
Right.
In retrospect, people will have so many things to point to. Isn't there also like when the stock market is up, like the home teams, like there's all these like things that people will be able to point to no matter what happens and say, that's why this happened.
What are the octopuses? What do they think? Because they're good at that.
All right. So you think that 6 out of 7 of the Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, and
it just sounds so unlikely when you say it like that. Those are horrible
who did
places.
I leave out? New Mexico? Is that
Nevada, Arizona? Yeah,
Nevada is the one that I left out.
Yeah, and Nevada will be like so close. It'll be so close.
Who votes for not Trump in Nevada?
I mean, they only have like the one big city, right? And there's not
I
a lot
know,
else
but they're
going on
full of
there.
Trumpers. It's just weird that Nevada and Arizona are ever up for grabs. They seem so Republican.
Arizona used to be, but yeah, Nevada has been pretty consistently Democratic.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, again, I cannot stress enough how little
Well, no one knows.
I know what is going to happen tomorrow. I don't know how you can be so confident that 6 out of 7 of these states are all going to go in the same direction.
It is only ever confident.
So just quickly, my theory is that there is a very fragile 50 plus 1% anti-Trump coalition. They're not necessarily for, like, not all of them are for Harris or Biden or whatever, but enough you can cobble enough together to get over the 50 plus 1%. And I don't see how that has changed in 4 years. And so, like, it'll likely be like 50, 51% Harris, 48% Trump, like in the national vote totals. And there'll be enough votes in all of those states for Harris to win. And so basically just take the last election, make some modifications, and then you have your output. Very simple math. Not as these stupid
What
nerds.
explains the fact that Trump leads in most of the battleground polling averages that you look at?
Well, they're all like, what are we talking about? Like a point or two in either direction?
Right. So what explains, if it's not just the herding thing, where none of these polls want to be seen as being wrong, and so they'd prefer to just say, hey, it's a fucking coin flip. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
And then when the result comes out and the chances are halfway decent that it's within the margin of error, even if it's 3 in the wrong direction there, they can say, hey, we were actually pretty close there.
Right.
Nothing to complain about. Is it that they have overcompensated? Because as I said, my silly model in 2020 was just throw 5 points at Trump and then see what the outcome is, assuming that that he secures 5 additional points here.
Right.
That would be foolish to do this time around, because if Trump gets a +5 everywhere, if somehow they have once again failed to account for the quiet or shy Trump voter in their responses, then he's going to win in a massive landslide. Right. Like he will get 350 electoral votes
easy.
If they have failed one more time to account for the fact that Trump people don't like picking up the phone and telling pollsters that they're going to vote for Donald Trump. So the only rational explanation, besides the herding effect, is we are terrified of getting this wrong in the same way again, and so we are very much over counting the shy Trump voter effect.
Why? Why even bother? Why do we do this? Why don't we just all go vote and we count them and see what happens?
Ultimately, that's what's going to happen. But I'm trying to figure out what will account if she wins tomorrow. I don't think it would be crazy for me to say this was a massive failure by the polling outfits.
If she wins tomorrow, it's because of people like me. If you called me and said, I'm a pollster, who are you voting for? I would say, I went and voted for Donald Trump last Friday. I would say it every fucking time.
Why?
Because what the fuck are we doing? What are we doing?
So
why are you asking me that? I voted for Donald Trump last week.
You would lie to the pollster?
I would fully lie to them.
Well, by the way, it is, I mean, all these numbers are like 50-48, 50-50. So, like, if Trump were to win, I would not be surprised at all. If Harris were to win, I would be not surprised at all. I don't know why you'd be surprised if coin flipped one way or the other. It's not like, right? I mean, like, what?
Because it's not exactly a coin flip. I think if you go and you look at everything that we've seen for the last 6 weeks or so, everything has been leaning Trump. If you look at, if we're going to take these averages seriously, that should be accounting for the random variance in the polls, and the fact that he's ahead in 6 out of 7 of them every single time out should tell you something about reality. And I'm saying if she wins, that is counter to the reality that has been presented
even with Silver's thing, like there's no way all of these things are going to happen, right? I mean, like the chances that everything breaks exactly the way that these pollsters have at these averages is unlikely, right? So you're going to see some states are going to be razor thin and some there are going to be a couple of points, right? Like not all states are going to be like by 20,000 votes. And so like it's going to break one way or the other. And I'm assuming it's going to break towards Harris. But if it broke towards Trump, I would not be surprised. I'm just not surprised either way. I don't know why you would be surprised if it broke one way.
I would be surprised if it breaks towards Harris simply because everything that I've looked at for the last 6 weeks has said, yes, it's very close. Yes, it's technically a coin flip, but we're all on the red side here. Like the majority of these things have been on the red side for the last 6 weeks, and I would be surprised if the result is in the other direction.
Isn't there like an enthusiasm number that's like Trump is underwater with the enthusiasm? Like I don't know how predictive that is, but there are some like indicators that show that there is some sluggishness in Trump's support. And there was some of that during the primary. I'm not saying we're going to have a repeat of that. Remember where Trump underperformed the polls during the primary run when, I mean, it's pretty much him and Haley, but like he wasn't hitting the numbers that he was expected to hit.
If she loses Pennsylvania and therefore loses the election, it will have been the mistake of a generation to choose Tim Walz instead of Josh Shapiro as your vice presidential candidate. Why not choose the popular Democratic governor of the most important swing state to be your running mate? And that will be the thing that everyone points to, and I will have trouble arguing with them in terms of why she lost. If she fails to win Pennsylvania and therefore in all likelihood fails to win the presidency, it will be the Walz pick who ends up being an absolute nothing pick, ends up being Tim fucking Kaine, ends up being a nothing vice presidential pick when she could have had the popular Democratic governor of Pennsylvania.
Right. I mean, there could be many reasons why she would lose Pennsylvania, but you're right. If she were to lose it and that's why she lost the election, everybody will go there, and it'll be kind of hard to refute. You just have to kind of take it on the chin. Which battleground state do you think will be called first? North Carolina?
Yeah, I imagine North Carolina will go early. There's a couple of, like Kornacki, I don't have them listed here, but I know what I'll be looking for, and there's a couple of counties that he's pointed to in North Carolina and in like Wisconsin and Pennsylvania that, like, if we get those numbers, like we're not going to know that Donald Trump has won the thing until we get a definitive result from the blue wall breaking, right? Like, right. You cannot. It's unlikely to say that because it's 2:30 in the morning on in 2016 when all of a sudden the needle fucking flips on its head,
yeah,
and Donald Trump is going to win this fucking thing. I would be surprised if we got a result on Tuesday night, but if North Carolina and Georgia hold for Trump, then we're in for a long one, right?
Yes.
If either one of those states is like, oh shit, this went blue, then I think that they can start fucking popping champagne, because I cannot imagine.
They better not pop any goddamn champagne.
Yes, it's hard for me to imagine a situation in which Trump loses Georgia and or North Carolina, and like I know that there's a map in which he can still get the job done. Yes, and there's certainly a plausible path to victory. But like, imagine he loses Georgia and North Carolina and wins Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Like, how do those three things go together and make any sense? I don't see it.
And the other thing, going back to my who's the governor, who are the senators thing. Like, Pennsylvania's another state where it's going to be a uphill battle. I know the polls say whatever, but I just look at just who have these people voted in before? And like usually that's how it goes. And so they say that it's going to be a toss-up in Pennsylvania, but I suspect Harris will win that state.
Yeah, and if she wins that state, it's hard to find a path for Trump that doesn't include a surprise in Wisconsin,
Right.
or because if he wins Nevada and Arizona and Georgia and North Carolina, that only puts him at 268, right?
Yeah.
Like that most likely map still is probably 270 to 268,
Yeah.
where she holds on to the Great Lakes states and he holds on to the entire Sun Belt.
Yeah, he needs to break through. He needs to sweep the Sun Belt and break through the wall, right? Whereas Harris, all she needs to do is just win the blue wall states.
Yeah. If I'm making a prediction, I will be surprised if it's anything but a Donald Trump victory. But in terms of a most likely map, I'm going to say it's that 270 to 268 number.
Man, what chaos that would 270 to 268 would be remarkable. And she gets to 270 through like Nebraska, right? Getting that one in Nebraska, like
Right.
It's yeah.
What is the most and the answer to the question, what is the most brain-breaking and deranging solution to the election? It feels like we're in the reality where only the most brain-breaking and destabilizing thing can happen. And I think that in terms of, yes, you can say a Donald Trump presidency is more deranging and more politically destabilizing for the globe, perhaps. But in terms of the world that we live in, I think maybe it would be more destabilizing for Kamala Harris to win 270 to 268.
I hope we get to find out.
I don't think so, because Trump is not in power. He's got no like levers to pull. There's nothing. It would just be the end of it. It'll make a big show of it, but I don't see this destabilizing thing you predict. If it's 270, 268, it'll be like wow, and then people move on. Like what was it in 2000? 271, 267 when Al Gore lost.
Yeah, 500 votes in Florida ultimately made the difference.
And a Supreme
I don't
Court.
know.
Yeah. Should be fun.
It will not be.
It'll
fun.
be something. How are you going to ingest the returns tomorrow night?
I was either going to watch it here, or they have some watch parties like around the city, or maybe like be like a sporting event, like watching like a Carson Beck game and see how it goes.
Yeah, I don't know that
When do you think Bob's going to go to bed?
Yeah, that's my real question is, when am I going to go to bed on Tuesday night? And because I all-nightered it in 2016, I believe. I might have gone to bed at like...
No, you didn't come to bed.
5 in the morning or something.
Yeah, 5 or so. Yeah, when the crew switched over.
Oh, really? I actually woke up to the text. I knew that
Yeah.
Trump was going to win, but it wasn't like called. I think it was like midnight or 1. I was like, all right, this is not going in one direction. It's going the other way, and then just went to sleep.
Bob stayed up to watch Van Jones cry.
In 2020, I was awake when he gave his 2:30 a.m. press conference saying
We were at
this
Disney,
is a fraud.
so everything was great. We fucked up this year.
Yeah, Lori was asleep, but I was sitting there watching election returns until the wee hours of the morning.
So
But ultimately,
you're going to do that again?
I think I went to sleep at like...
You went to sleep, and then we found out days later, so...
Yeah.
Like Saturday,
It wouldn't have
right?
done you any good.
Yeah.
The only way that I can like go to bed at a rational hour is if something weird happens and they call North Carolina or Georgia for Harris first thing, because otherwise, you're not going to get a Pennsylvania result tomorrow night in all likelihood, right?
Pennsylvania. Yeah. I was looking to see like what the sequence of events. Like I think there was one website that had it, but I think Georgia, North Carolina will be quick. Michigan will be after that. Pennsylvania will take some time. So like if you can tell by those states which way it's going to go. But like Pennsylvania will take a little while. I don't know Wisconsin's format, but like Michigan, I heard that there are some states that allow you to pre-process, to verify signatures and all that stuff so that you can just begin counting on election day. And other states, they don't let you do that. I think Pennsylvania is one of those.
Florida will be a quick result. It usually is, ever since the disaster that they had in 2000 anyway. and it might tell us something about the national picture. It won't obviously be dispositive of anything in terms of the result. It's going to go for Trump. There's very little question about that. But in terms of how close it is and what because that, again, like in 2016, when all of those South Florida counties start coming in, which are full of Hispanic voters, and they're going more strongly for Trump than anyone had predicted at that point. If he has a huge night in Florida, like you're talking about, like what are you looking for as things are unfolding? If he has a huge night in Florida and they are unable to call North Carolina or Georgia for Harris, I think that you can start to think this is probably going to go Trump's way. Like if the number in Florida is big, because it comes in and it comes in definitively, right? Like Florida is not going to be one of these drawn out states
very fast. They do a good
where we
job.
don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Then you can start getting nervous about how things are going to go. If it's closer than it has been before, then maybe you start looking elsewhere. But
yeah, that'll be interesting. I do think though, like if Harris were to win, the story will be because women put her over the top, and if Trump wins, it'll be that man showed up on election day, because there's a big gap in these early voting numbers. When they do the breakdown, it's like 55-45 women have voted already. And so like on election day, like if the men who are predicted to break towards Trump show up, then they'll bridge that gap. But if not, then Trump will be underwater.
What is the gender gap number in most of these recent polls?
It varies, but it's like 55-45, I thought.
No. In terms of support for the various candidates, I think that she's up plus 14 and he's up plus 18 among men, right?
Yeah.
So she's got plus 14 women, he's got plus 18 men.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Which again points to a weird situation unfolding where if that trend continues, are we going to have a situation where Republicans are much more explicitly the party of men and Democrats are much more explicitly the party of women?
Hard to be more explicit than they have been.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I don't know. And I'm fine with not making any particular predictions about what's going to happen tomorrow night.
Well, you've talked about it for an hour and a half.
Yeah. Any reason to think that Allred has any chance of unseating Ted Cruz in Texas? Any reason to think that, what are some of the other interesting ones? Could Montana somehow miraculously stay blue? Or is that definitely going to, in terms of the Senate seat?
Like the tester seat, right? In Texas, I'll believe it when I see it. I keep hearing about this is going to flip or this or that. I don't think it's going to happen. Like, Cruz is going to win, maybe like much closer than it has in previous years, but like I'll have to see that for me to believe it. And until then, I don't. I think the Montana seat is also lost. I think like the Senate map looks pretty good for the Republicans. Like at this point, they're going to be 51-49.
Yeah, the absolute worst case scenario for Republicans, I think, is a 50-50 Senate at this point.
Yeah.
And then they can maybe they end up with a tie-breaking vote, maybe they don't. What about the House? Any thoughts on which way the House is going?
So, I mean, I'm thinking a lot of these states or the battleground states are going to break towards Harris, and I think there'll be enough congressional seats breaking towards the Democrats that they'll retake the Congress or at least the House. But if it goes like you're predicting, then it'll go the other way. Then it'll be a sweep. Earlier this year I was like, I can't imagine there being a split decision. Like if it's going to go red, it'll be all red. And if it goes blue, it'll be all blue.
Hey-o.
But now there's no chance for an all blue, right? So the most likely scenario would be all red. Right. But I still think like the House is going to be like very narrow Dem. Like for some reason, just the way that all those seats kind of went towards the Republicans in 22, I suspect it'll go back the other way this cycle.
Yeah. Well, in 2020, and in 2016, I think I ended with a prayer, a hope that we would do better next time, and we have not done better next time in either case, and so hopefully in 2028 we will do better.
First of all,
although
Bob,
it's pointing towards a best case scenario, Harris v. Vance in 2028, which. I mean, I guess it would be better.
It's not going to be Vance. If Trump were to lose, they're going to pin this fucking dum-dum ruined it for my boy Trump. They'll be like, he'll get the blame for some reason. He won't be a viable candidate if they lose.
I don't know. I think he's got something. I think the people like him for some reason. I don't fully understand it. I wanted to fucking reach through my television and strangle the guy on multiple occasions over the course of the last week because he's such a fucking liar, and he's so happy to fucking lie about it. And it's just. He's such a JD Vance is such a piece of shit when he's talking about we need to get back to the steady and like stable leadership of Donald Trump. Yeah. Like of all of the things that you can like the adjectives that you would use to describe the Trump presidency, like stable leadership is at the very bottom of any list that I can think of.
Didn't he also say he said something along the lines of like we have like the normal gay vote or something, or like we're going after like the normal gay man are behind our campaign. I don't know what he meant by that.
All right. Any other thoughts on the 2024 presidential election before we inevitably get together for an emergency podcast on Wednesday night?
I would like to thank all of the states that will be able to count these votes in a timely manner, including Florida and Georgia and North Carolina and it sounds like Michigan. States like Pennsylvania and New York and California do better. I know New York and California doesn't mean anything, but just I hate the very slow way of doing things. Just fucking count the votes. It shouldn't be that difficult.
I hate that I'm going to be so relieved if Kamala Harris is the next president of the United States. Like, it really bums me out that, like...
Don't pull yourself away from this. Just be relieved.
I know, but
just be relieved to be relieved.
Imagine, like, 2009 Bob.
No,
like,
no.
Gazing upon 2024 Bob and being like, what has become of you that you are relieved that Kamala Harris is going to be the next president of the United States?
Bob didn't know about Donald Trump.
I did. I hated him then, too.
What was to hate about him then? He was nobody.
He was an obnoxious presence on network television.
We didn't watch network television.
He was part of the culture in 2009.
So you're generally aware of him. Like, everybody's been. I mean, he was in Home Alone. I mean, he's been around. Wasn't it Harris? It was that phone call, and she called Biden, and she's like, "We did it, Joe." Do you think she would, if she were to win, she calls him again and she said, "I did it, Joe," or it'll be something different?
No, she would call Maya Rudolph.
Oh, okay.
And they would.
That's right.
He is. Old Joe is like completely out of it.
He is
like,
still fucking up. Like I just.
Is it possible? So like that old thing, and Jimmy Carter is the exception that proves the rule, probably. But like the old guy who's married to the old lady for fucking 50 years, and the picture of health the entire time, and then the wife dies, and 2 weeks later the husband is dead because he just can't go on.
It happens to the wives too.
It happens to absolutely. Is it possible that Joe Biden's physical and mental degradation has been accelerated by the fact that he no longer like has to be the president anymore, right. and like isn't running,
right.
Like because he seems real bad with the brain,
right.
and with the ability to communicate more so now than ever before.
Well, it's also the thing where like people work till they're fucking 80, and people are like, "You need to retire," and they're like, "No, I'm." Like working, and then they retire, and then they die.
Right. They work into their 80s, and then they finally stop working, and it's like, now I can rest. And then the next Thursday, they're fucking dead.
They had no reason to be alive.
Then they rest permanently. Yeah.
Has Joe Biden effectively by not running for president, has he accelerated his decline, or is this just what was going to happen no matter what? And like, can we just be thankful that he's not front and center attempting to be the president?
Those things.
Right. I think he seems like he's more or less the same guy, right? I mean, he always fucks up, you know?
He's real bad.
But he's been like that, like in March. And I mean, after his highest moment this year was that he got through a State of the Union, like, okay. And then it's been just downhill since.
I was, once again... And this is, if I was going to, the thing that I attempted to write about this election, about how to vote this year, I lost the thread fairly quickly. But the idea was to talk about how there's this meme sort of, and this, I attribute it essentially to Scott Adams, the Dilbert guy.
Oh, okay.
But he talks about all of the different hoaxes of the Trump presidency. Like, he has this list where it's like, where do you stand on this following list of popular news events. And like if you still believe X, Y, and Z about the way the world was presented to you, then you have been poisoned, and you've just continued to fall for hoaxes, basically, and you've been fooled by the media narrative that is not in keeping with reality. And one of the ones that people always point to is the quote unquote very fine people hoax with regards to Trump's comments after the Charlottesville Unite the Right rally. Essentially saying that anybody who says that Trump called Nazis very fine people has fallen for a media hoax that is not in keeping with the reality of that situation.
Will you play the clip?
Sure.
A hoax.
Like a Mandela effect thing? Because I was on my bed here in Charlottesville. I don't know, I said there are fine people on both sides.
I'm not putting anybody on a moral plane. What I'm saying is this. You had a group on one side and you had a group on the other, and they came at each other with clubs, and it was vicious, and it was horrible, and it was a horrible thing to watch. But there is another side. There was a group on this side, you can call them the left, or you've just called them the left, that came violently attacking the other group. So you can say what you want, but that's the way it is.
On both sides, sir? You said there was hatred, there was violence on both sides.
Well, I do think there's blame. Yes, I think there's blame on both sides. You look at both sides. I think there's blame on both sides, and I have no doubt about it, and you don't have any doubt about it either. And if you reported it accurately, you would say.
Neo-Nazis started this. They showed up in Charlottesville to protest.
Excuse me. They didn't put themselves down as neo, and you had some very bad people in that group. But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group. Excuse me. I saw the same pictures as you did. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue, and the renaming of a park from Robert E. Lee to another name.
The point there is simply being that in the aftermath of that press conference, a lot of people insisted that Trump had called neo-Nazis very fine people. And as a result of people believing that, fact-checking organizations like Snopes and the Washington Post and PolitiFact and all of the other ones that have sprung up essentially since 2016, the entire fact-checking industrial media complex, they had to admit, in the parlance of the hoax truthers,
Right.
that Trump did not call neo-Nazis and white supremacists very fine
He
people.
didn't not.
He didn't, though, right? So because the reaction to it was Trump called neo-Nazis very fine people, then you get the fact checkers coming in and saying, well, no, he very explicitly did not do that. Right. He was saying that while there were neo-Nazis, also with the neo-Nazis, there were other people who were not neo-Nazis, but who ultimately were on the other side of...
They were on the side of neo-Nazis, but they weren't neo-Nazis?
Right. Okay. And so he wasn't calling the neo-Nazis very fine people. He was calling the history enthusiasts very fine people.
Who were aligned
right?
with the neo-Nazis.
Right. And what the Scott Adams types will do, the people who are saying that I have had the wool pulled over my eyes by a media narrative that is false, is that any mention of Charlottesville becomes a claim. They immediately straw man say my mention of Charlottesville as saying, oh, you were just fooled by the very fine people hoax. It's not your fault, right? It's the media's fault. But you were overcome with emotion as a result of the media telling you that Trump called Nazis very fine people, when at no point did I say Trump called Nazis very fine people, right? That is not actually the position that I'm taking. My horror at Charlottesville and Trump's reaction to it had nothing to do with whether or not Donald Trump in fact called neo-Nazis very fine people. At no point did I believe that Donald Trump called neo-Nazis very fine people. But that becomes the straw man that people like Scott Adams use to tell me that I've been fooled by
Gotcha.
the world in a meaningful way. My abhorrence at what happened in Charlottesville and Trump's reaction to it was that it doesn't matter that there were, in fact, very fine people on both sides, right? Of course, there were probably fine people on both sides. That's a meaningless distinction to make when you have a fucking torch rally that looks like a white supremacist march through Charlottesville, right? And then you have a day of violence as a result of that. It would seem to me a moment in which a person with any sense of decency and morality and ethics would not insist on a very fine people on both sides kind of narrative. And that was the thing that I was horrified by, the thing that was disgusting to me in a visceral sort of sense, and something that I felt intuitively and ethically in my bones, right? Like, I mean, not to make it about simply one's visceral reaction to the world and the stimuli that we're provided with, but like Trump's insistence that there's a nuance to be had here was all I needed to know about his reaction to that event, right? Like the fact that he's trying to draw a fine line in the sand here and act like the nuance haver, act like the knower of the very specific, difficult questions at hand here. That is what was disgusting to me. That is what was horrifying to me. That in a moment of easy moral clarity, when you can say, it doesn't matter about the name of the fucking statue or the name of the fucking park. And by the way, if you go further into the nuance of it, the entire fucking thing falls apart anyway. Because fuck your stupid statue that the Daughters of the Confederacy paid for in the 19-teens, right? Nobody fucking cares.
Right.
What are we talking about here? That's a bullshit thing to stand upon, is this fake history that they're trying to promote. So, like, whatever. Not to go off on something that happened many years ago. That's just one small example of the various ways in which Donald Trump is utterly disqualified in my mind from holding this sort of an office. But it happened again this week with the stupid Puerto Rico and garbage comments back and forth. And then again with the Liz Cheney comments about how he wants Liz Cheney, and I'll just play the clip here. I'm not going to do it now, but I'll drop it in here.
So he sounds so, I mean, I know it's been nearly 10 years, but holy shit, did he sound younger then?
Yeah, he sounds way worse now.
He sounds terrible. I hope he dies tonight.
But there was an immediate reaction to Donald Trump saying that in the best case scenario, so in the same way that the very fine people hoaxers are going to insist that it is my dumbass who is insisting that that's getting all worked up over nothing because of the very fine people hoax. When he goes to like a Tucker Carlson concert. Tucker Carlson's a fucking traveling concert man now, where he fills small arenas and talks to people probably for $150 a pop or something like that, right? And makes big piles of money in this fashion, since he doesn't have that Fox TV money coming in anymore. But he's sitting there talking about how Dick Cheney was incredibly grateful because he pardoned Scooter Libby and called him up and was giving him a fellatio over the telephone because of what a great man Donald Trump is. And then his shitbag daughter turns around and tries to get him thrown out of office, right? And he's talking about what a piece of shit Liz Cheney is. And he says something like, she's a war hawk and she wants to send all of your kids to war. But if you put a rifle in her hand and then had 9 guns trained on her face, she'd probably change her tune, right?
And I don't blame him for sticking with his daughter, but his daughter's a very dumb individual, very dumb. She's a radical war hawk. Let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her, okay? Let's see how she feels about it. You know, when the guns are trained on her face.
Something very clear in my mind about his quote there, which I will have played in the show, but I'm not playing right now, that calls to mind a firing squad.
Yeah,
right?
what else could he be talking about?
And so the defense of it that was immediately taken up by an entire half of the political spectrum, and then not only that half, but also like the nuance knowers, the very fine people hoaxers who insist on like taking the most bad faith individual in the history of the communicated word, which is Donald Trump, right? Like somebody who operates purely in bad faith all of the time. And then there are the fucking nuance knowers who come in and say, oh, but let me explain to you what he actually meant. And what he actually meant is that Liz Cheney's a chicken hawk, and that if you had to send her out to war, she wouldn't be so quick to send your children off to war, right? Which, by the way, in the context of Ukraine, doesn't make any fucking sense, right? Like what American boy or girl is being sent overseas to fight in Israel or in Ukraine? And the answer is none. So like the chicken hawk thing doesn't make any sense in response to current global events. But setting that aside, this idea that in fact what Donald Trump was saying is that Liz Cheney would be less quick to put your children in harm's way if it meant putting herself in harm's way as well, is very clearly not the sentiment that he was getting at in that moment. But it is the sentiment that I'm supposed to swallow as a response to what he said there, right? Somehow I am the deranged one if I hear him talking about lining Liz Cheney up in front of 9 rifles all trained on her face. That's not supposed to call up in me a firing squad? Is it 1890? Right? Is this the Revolutionary War? Like, because that's the only other, like, what antiquated form of warfare is he imagining goes on in the world now? No warfare that has happened since before World War I have you ever had to think about standing in front of a line of rifles and having them trained on your face? This is not the fucking Civil War. It's fucking 2024. So, like, what other image could he possibly be calling up besides a firing squad? And it's, like, supremely obvious to me. But to the nuance knowers and to the Trump defenders, I'm the deranged one. I'm the psycho who's doing mind reading here and misunderstanding the reality of the world around me. And it blows my mind that these same people who are insisting that what happened, that because you can draw that fine line in the sand in the very fine people so-called hoax, that is now the world that we live in, where you are just going to spend at any moment that he says something awful, you're going to expend all of your energy insisting that the thing that he said is in fact not the thing that he said, because you can find this way to draw this line in this particular way. And it's like, it's utterly mystifying to me that that's the world these people have chosen to live in, rather than just respond to the reality of the world that he presents, especially given the fact that he's supposed to be the truth teller, right? You're not supposed to have to read nuance into the things that he says. He's the plain spoken cocksucker. He's the one who tells it like it is. You don't have to go digging to find out what he actually meant. You shouldn't have to do all of these the circus apologetics to make sense of the thing so that it's not horrifying. And like it whatever. That's why I wasn't able to write the thing, because like I'm so completely ill-equipped now to communicate with people who see the world in that way. And that's a fucking bummer. Like, it drives me crazy that I cannot, and that it would be a complete waste of my fucking time to try to communicate with people who have been like, who've mattered to me my whole fucking life, right? We're talking about family members and long-term friends who completely do not understand the world as I see it anymore, because we live in completely different realities. And that is such a fucking bummer.
I mean, that is the whole thing. Like, you create a reality distortion field. I mean, just more recently, I think Trump said something about, hey, I wouldn't mind if the press that's following me around at these rallies, like, if somebody was trying to shoot at me, if it got to them, like, I wouldn't mind. And, like, his campaign spokesperson said, like, oh, he meant like they're in harm's way because, you know, it's a dangerous thing getting shot, and he meant nothing else. Like, no other interpretation is valid. Like,
wait, what is that? Like Stephen Chung or Chang or something like that? Yeah. His spokesman, who's just utterly shameless in the way that he lies. I think Karine Jean-Pierre is one of the worst press secretaries we've had in my entire life, and I'm counting fucking Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
Sean Spicer.
who is fucking awful. And I'm counting Kayleigh McEnany, who is also awful. I think Karine Jean-Pierre is along those lines in terms of her willingness and ability to spew bullshit. But if our future is Stephen Chang or Chung or whatever the guy's name is, in terms of the press communications, we are in so much more trouble than we possibly have been in the past. Because yes, like you're saying, not only is he denying the reality of the thing that Donald Trump very clearly said, he's in fact turning it around and saying, no, red is blue. Right. He's saying no. He was actually expressing concern for the well-being of the press. Right. And is he saying that with a big load of shit in his mouth so that you know he's full of shit? Of course he is. But that doesn't stop them from insisting that that is the reality that they're going to go with moving forward. Right? It's alternative facts on fucking steroids. It's something else entirely. It's we reject your reality and substitute our own simply because we can.
I reject your reality and I substitute my own.
But because they chose it. That's why you being mad at anybody but them is so stupid and wrong. They chose this. Also, they could easily see it the right way, and they're on purpose not doing it.
They're not making this stuff.
That's why you can't relate to them.
They're not making this stuff up just to make it up. It's basically there are two principles, like no apologies and no conceding like a race, right? So basically, like the lie, like if you lose a race, lie about it. And if something bad happens, do not say like, oh, the president should not have said that, he was wrong. Like he would never do that, right? So basically, it has to be like you just read that wrong, heard it wrong, you're wrong.
All right. I yelled a bit about the election and other things. We will now roll the dice. I'm going to refresh the page so everyone can see me rolling the dice. We are going to year number 30 in our game, which
that's quite late.
Is the end of our game. That will be 2012. You know what that means? For the first time,
Obama?
We're going to the last chart that is available to us, because if we go to October or November rather of 2012, we are beyond the end of Party Rock Anthem's run.
Oh my God.
So we have to go back to the last time that Party Rock Anthem was on the charts, which was in June or July of 2012. How exciting. We haven't had this happen before.
Wait, we're past it, or we can still, are we looking at this week in 2012 or no?
No, we have to look at, I mean, I guess I could adjust it, but
I think that this should count.
July 21st, 2012 was the last time that Party Rockers LMFAO appeared on the Billboard Hot 100 chart.
Wait, I have a way of knowing if you go to this chart, is Party Rock Anthem anywhere on the chart?
Yeah, maybe they are 91.
Is it in the top 100?
No, that's the point. They left the Billboard Hot 100 in July of 2012, and that was the end of the run for Party Rockers everywhere. So we have to go to that. According to the rules of the game, as previously stipulated, we have to go to July 21st, 2012. But first, we have to go to this week's Billboard Hot 100.
I think we should do both. I think we should look at this. I think we should look at this week.
And head to number 91 on the charts, all the way deep. Ooh, I have some exciting news. I don't know how this bears on the presidential election, but there's a new number one.
Wow.
A bar song, Tipsy by Shabuzi, has fallen to the number 2 slot.
Morgan Wallen sucks, though.
And Morgan Wallen has taken over the number 1 with a song called Love Somebody. A song called Die With a Smile by Lady Gaga and Bruno Mars in the top 5 as well. But I have to scroll forever all the way to the end of this chart into the 90s. And number 91 is a song called Worst Way by an artist named Riley Green.
Country.
Sure seems like it. This guy does not miss arm day down there at the gym, that's for sure. Look at how vascular this motherfucker is in his forearms. Look at it. It's like fucking Popeye.
Tonight I ain't bringing no wine. Tonight I ain't bringing no roses. Talking would take too much time. I think I just
No, I said stop it. This is assault.
Baby, that don't mean that I don't love to go wine and dine.
Nope.
That ain't on the menu tonight.
I'm gonna throw up.
Lori is very aroused.
I hate
as you can
this. What's the opposite of aroused?
It's a pretty aggressive song. By the way, Bob, I did not hear what you were saying. The music drowned you out.
That's a neat way of escaping accountability for what your co-host has said. Abe, I was simply pointing out that though this is no doubt a sign of my own homophobia and toxic masculinity, I cannot help but react to this sort of sensitivity and vulnerability as put on display by this individual with the following. It would be a lie to suggest otherwise. This song is super fucking gay.
Baby, I need you tonight. Let's see how much love we can make. I want you in the worst way.
Gay.
That is my reaction.
Okay,
to that
my
song.
reaction was like, boy, the message seems to be like, I don't care what you want, I want what I want, and I'm coming to get it. Like, it seems like it doesn't matter what. Like, I want you the worst way, no matter what, whether you like it or not.
Right. I'm going, in Trump fashion, I'm going to protect the women, whether they like it or not. This song gets better every time I hear it, if that's possible. This is the sexiest song I've heard in a long, long time. That's from @SusanDavis-UTN. U2N. Riley made a classic hit, USA Population is About to Outgrow Itself, baby maker music. Lori, would you call this baby maker music?
I don't think I would call any music baby maker music.
A lot of babies going to be made off this one, Buddy Rowe.
Okay, moving along.
Nice guns.
That is an
I want to
unpleasant
hear
situation.
the new #1 song, the Morgan Wallen one. I want to see if I know it.
Rumors going all over town.
Nope,
Can't keep
never
my
mind.
name out the mouth these days.
Okay,
Yeah, they
never
say
mind.
I live too fast to settle down. Truth is,
I'll get
I
up
just
and turn it
ain't
off,
about
'cause
these
you don't.
games they all play. Won't look fine.
Thank you.
All right. We will now investigate the Billboard Hot 100 for July 21st, 2012, because that was the last time that Party Rockers LMFAO were on the Billboard Hot 100 charts. Call Me Maybe by Carly Rae Jepsen
There
was
you
the
go.
#1 song. Jepsen, I should say. But we have to scroll all the way down to number 91. And it's a song by the Imagine Dragons.
Uh-oh.
It's called It's Time. We might have to go to the other chart.
Yeah, we could do both.
So this is what you meant when you said that you would spend. And now it's time to build from the bottom of the pit right to the top. Don't hold back.
Yeah, this one.
Bags and giving
This one's fine.
me a rain check. I don't ever wanna let you down. I don't ever wanna
Happy
leave
little pop
this
song.
town. 'Cause after all, the city never sleeps at night. It's time to begin, isn't it? I get a little bit bigger than that. I'll admit I'm just the same as I was. Now don't you understand?
This is fine. This is a fine
It
whatever.
certainly doesn't prove the point, but yeah, it's better than that other song. Although, again, that might simply be a reflection of our
No.
biases.
No. This is a lovely little pop song that we'll be hearing forever.
I am now going to go to the Billboard Hot 100 chart for the week of November 4th through the 10th of 2012, and then go down to number 91. We've got Maroon 5 at number 1. Gangnam Style by Psy at number 2. Some Nights by Fun. Die Young by Kesha. Number 91 for this week was a Taylor Swift song called Stay, Stay, Stay. Also automatically superior to the country song that we heard earlier.
Yeah, but this isn't like a song I'm hearing over and over again forever.
I will say, though, I can't fucking stand Taylor Swift, and that's enough of that. So that's fine. The vote is for the year 2012 over the year 2024. Any disagreement among the crowd here?
No.
That makes, you know what it makes me want to check? It makes me want to check the Billboard Hot 100. What was the last good election, Abe? Name me your favorite presidential election of your lifetime.
The 2000?
2000 election. Let's find the Billboard Hot 100.
What made that good?
It was so close. It had the Supreme Court come in, back and forth. It had the Brooks Brothers riot. It was the whole thing. It was a lot of fun.
What date did we vote in 2000? I'm going to look at this.
We didn't.
Calendar here. That's right. I was too young to vote. Abe, you were too young by like a month to vote in that election.
Too young and not a citizen. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That also a bit of a barrier.
Yeah. Double whammy, I think.
That was November the 7th of the year 2000. The week November 5 through the 11th. The number one song in all the land was With Arms Wide Open.
Okay.
By Creed.
Okay. That's more like it.
Number one. I did not
and your
know that
favorite
it made it all
band
the
at
way to
number
the-
3.
Maybe my least favorite of the popular Creed songs was With Arms Wide Open.
Oh, Paul.
Like, I could deal with Higher.
Oh, is today the 4th? 1 month away. We already got tickets to the Creed thing, December 4th. It'll be a lot of fun.
God.
Where are you seeing them? At
It's a State Farm at the where the Hawks play.
Wow.
Indoors.
A great Madonna song at number 2 that week, Music by Madonna. I enjoyed
think
that
I
song.
know it very
Oh,
well.
yes, you do.
Hey, Mr. DJ, put a record on. I wanna dance with my baby. And when the music starts, I never wanna stop. It's gonna drive me crazy.
No, it's not nearly as good as the Ray of Light album, but
Ollie G.
Is Ollie G?
yes, Ollie G is in the video. You Jumpin' by Destiny's Child at
Yes.
number 10.
Fantastic.
Shake Your Ass by Mystical at number
Yep.
13. She Bangs by Ricky Martin at number
Okay.
16. Oh, You're a God, Abe's favorite band, Vertical Horizon.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Creed might have been the first band that I truly delighted in hating. Like, Creed opened the door for me to hate a lot of things, and I'm thankful for that gift that they gave me.
Look how sincere he is.
Then tears of joy stream down my face with arms wide open.
I love the self-serious looks that the guitarist gives, and yes, right here, yeah. Strum.
I feel so bad for everyone involved. with this music video.
Take her by my side. We're standing on. We've created land. We're on wide open under the sunlight.
This is actually the same song as Aerosmith's "Don't Want to Miss a Thing."
It's not far afield from that, certainly. More strings. We need more strings.
I'll show you everything. With arms wide open. Wide open.
Is the good part.
There's no good part. Could I have possibly hated Train in the way that I came to truly hate Train, if not for the proving grounds of hating Creed first?
I think so. I think you could have. I believe in you.
I don't know if I would have hated them as purely and honestly as I did.
Probably would have.
If not for years.
All right, we've been listening to Cast Iron Brains.
Sorry, hating Creed. It's the self-importance, I think, that gets me, Abe. I think that's what it is.
Oh, is that what it is?
I mean, also the music sucks, but it's the self-importance that really takes it to the next level. You've been listening to Cast Iron Brains, a podcast with Bob and Abe. Check out the show on Substack, brainiron.substack.com for more from us. Maybe the occasional emergency pod in the next week or so, depending on how things
I don't have
shake out.
time for that.
No, it's just going to be me and Abe down here. Maybe just me. Maybe I'll just get down here and turn the TV on and get a freeze frame of Abe sitting across the way from me and just go.
Whatever happens, I'm going to be shitting on the pollsters, no matter what.
You can also go to tetramermusic.com, Tetramer music.com for more from Mark Gillig, who provided our opening and closing themes and is no doubt enjoying the wedded bliss of the first couple of weeks of marriage. Oh. Abe, did you, as you promised you would, go see Smile 2 this weekend?
I did. I actually went to see 2 movies this weekend, starting off with Smile 2. I like the movie. Like, if you've seen the first one, it's more or less kind of the similar beats. So if you like the first one, you'll like the second one. There seems to be, like, no escape. Like, if you find yourself in front of somebody who's, like, smiling weirdly and they kill themselves or die, like, there's no way out. It's like you have a better chance contracting
So this
Ebola.
is one of those like chain letter type of horror movies where you pass on the disease to the next guy.
Yeah.
They
but
die.
basically, you spend like a few days of just like, I'm losing my mind. Is this actually happening? And no one believes you. Like, oh, come on, behave better.
So do they just start smiling?
Eventually, yeah. They'll. I think at the very end she smiles, but like in the meantime.
What's the story? So like.
So there's like a pop
smiles.
star. She's like a pop star. She had she's just coming back on tour after a tragedy. Like her boyfriend or her were involved in a car crash. He dies. She lives, but she's out of it. And now she's back. She's ready to tour, and she comes across somebody who does a smiley thing, and he dies. And
What's the smiley thing?
What do you mean? Like they literally just smile at you, and they, like the first movie, like.
No, I did not see the first movie. That's what I'm asking.
I'm sorry. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you saw that. Okay. So, the first movie, there was like a normal person, and then they come across somebody who smiles at them weird, and then they kill themselves in front of you. And you're like, oh, that's weird. And now you're
that is
contaminated.
weird.
And then from that point on, you are now seeing crazy things happen, and you become so crazy that you smile yourself and you do the same thing. It's like this contagion that happens.
Okay.
And so in the first movie, I think it was like a nurse or somebody. They came to the office and she acted weird. And like in the second movie, it's a pop star, and somebody comes to her, and she, whatever. And the way that the story
M. Night Shyamalan's daughter who is the pop star?
No.
No, that's too bad.
It's I don't know why I know this. It's the whoever played Jasmine in Aladdin, like that lady. She's in this.
The live action Aladdin.
Yeah. But yeah. Anyways, if you've seen the first one, it's a different story, but it's the same beats. They did a pretty decent job of it.
Well, it's a horror movie sequel.
Yeah.
It better be.
Yeah. So you can't go wrong. I do want to focus my attention though on the second movie I watched, Juror 2. This is a Clint Eastwood movie. It's a
Juror number 2, which has gotten very lit. Apparently, Warner's is like trying to bury it. Right? They're not doing any promotion. They're not going to release it in 3,000 screens or whatever, and they're content to just let it show up in theaters for a couple of weeks and then make its way to streaming. Despite the fact that I've seen reviews that suggest that it's actually pretty great. Although I did see a couple of reviews that said that it was a complete flaming pile of dog shit.
No, those people, disregard them. They're outliers. Everybody else is right, except those people. It's a solid movie. Like Clint Eastwood, you're thinking like it is well into his 90s. Maybe he's going to fuck it up, but the story is implausible. I will say to the point about like it's not being shown in many places, I thought I could use my newly purchased e-bike to go to one of the 2 theaters that I can ride my bike to. They weren't showing it. I had to use a car to get to an even further AMC. It was ridiculous. I had to go all the way like out there near where the Braves play to watch the movie. It's ridiculous. I had to drive that far. Anyways,
You live in a really great American city when you have to leave your downtown that you live in, where ostensibly like everything is happening, and instead drive out to the burbs to get your cultural fix for the evening.
Sounds right.
So the story goes like this. So the easiest way to explain it, it's 12 Angry Men with a twist, right? So like in 12 Angry Men, there's like one of the jurors who was like holding out, and he convinces slowly everybody else, like, that person did it. What are we talking about? And he slowly wins them over one by one, right? So similarly, this juror number 2 is the main character, and he's starting to say, like, let's think about this, because they do the let's do the count now, and they're like, I think it was like 10-2 or 11-1 guilty. And he slowly works them out of that. I think got him to 6-6 eventually. But here's the twist. The case, he's a juror in this murder trial, right? So the boyfriend, it's always the boyfriend or husband who did it. Like a woman has died in a brutal way, and the last person to see her was the boyfriend. They got into a fight at a bar, right? And they're like, well, clearly this fucking guy did it. He looks like a fucking dipshit. So you're thinking, come on, let's do the math. He did it. The implausible part is juror number 2 knows he didn't kill her because he killed her.
Right. So the preview, you're not really spoiling anything because just the trailer for this movie gives all of that away.
Yeah.
Which is that he was leaving the bar that these people were also drinking at. Yeah. And like on his way home, he thought he hit a deer. Yes. But as it turns out, he probably plowed into the lady on the side of the road and killed her by mistake.
Yeah, because it matches the time and the street. Basically, everything lines up. Initially, it's not like he was like somebody who knowingly ran over somebody and left. Right. He clipped something. It was like a dark, rainy night. Clipped something. He gets out of the car. There's nothing there. So he's taking a deer and just kind of scattered off. And he just kind of moves on with his life. He finds himself in this jury, and he hears the story, the date, the time. Everything matches up. He's like, holy shit. And now the problem is, like, he can't come out and say, oh, this guy's totally innocent. It was me, right? So he has to, like, convince the jury without implicating himself, right? And so the movie kind of plays out like that. Well, he's trying to talk them out of it. Like, say, oh, there's a lot of doubt. Let's not do this, blah, 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 blah. eventually he can't get them.
Is there some like moral gray area here where the defendant is kind of a piece of shit anyway, and so like
he is kind of a piece of shit because they get into a fight at a bar, and she's like, "Fuck you! I'm gonna walk home in the middle of the night in the rain."
Right.
And he's like, "Well, fuck you." Then he gets in his car and he goes home. Like he knows like how far it is to get home. Like I don't know why he didn't offer her like an Uber or rideshare, but like she just walks home in like heels. Not a gentlemanly act on his part. So he's not painted in the right kind of frame.
Right.
The problem with juror number 2 is he's a degenerate drunk, a former degenerate drunk. He's got 2 DUIs under his belt already. He's a recovering alcoholic. He was about to have a new child. His wife is pregnant, and he is stressed out. So he goes to the bar, and he's tempted to drink. But he says he did not drink. He was just like... He ordered a shot. He sat at a booth, looked at it, and the boyfriend girlfriend are having their fight over there. And he decides not to drink. He gets in his car and then he clips her unknowingly.
Do we get like the Rochambeau effect where we're seeing this scene unfold from different perspectives throughout the movie?
Yeah, and this is like I'm a big fan of the courtroom drama. This is all playing out in court where they explain everything. What's that guy's name from the newsroom? Like Reese or whatever that idiot kid of like whatever. Like the suit from the newsroom is like the defense lawyer in this movie. I think it was like Reese something, but I forget his name. He's in this movie.
Chris Messina?
Yeah, Messina, but yeah, whatever his character was in the show. But he's in this movie. But so the whole thing unfolds like this, and the moral dilemma is like, does he give himself up? Because no one's gonna believe that he, a degenerate drunk, was at a bar and wasn't drinking. So
Right.
he must have done this deliberately as a drunk, and he's hiding it, And so he decides not to say anything. He's like, I'm gonna live for my kid. The poor sap is found guilty. He just lets them just take the.
So spoilers, but for the end of the movie, he fails to convince anybody else on the jury, and then also votes to convict.
So he gets to 6-6, like almost like at a deadlock, and then they just kind of cut to where he's at the hospital, and then the jurors, without him, reach a unanimous verdict. So, but they don't explain, like, did he take himself out of it, or he just voted also with the 12 so he can move on with his life. But by this point, he was kind of raising so much suspicion that the prosecutor started to look into it. They figured out that his car was involved in a crash.
Right.
And so now the prosecutor is deciding whether or not to raise alarm to say it was actually him.
Right.
And the movie
But no,
ends-
hey, we got the conviction. It's time to move
they
along
get a
here. What are you
conviction, but
talking about?
she's the DA now, and so the movie ends with her showing up to his house and giving him the look. Like, basically, he talked to her like, "Come on, let this slide. This guy's already in jail. What are we gonna do? Life sucks sometimes. I'm a good guy normally, right?" And she kind of took that in, and she's like, "Fuck that." And the movie just kind of ends that way. But like, the movie actually played out pretty well. I was surprised that they limited it to like, I think it's like under 100 screens. It's not like it's a very limited release.
Which is weird for somebody like Clint Eastwood, who has had not just popular and like major popular successes, in the not too distant past, and always has, he makes solid movies. Whatever else you want to say about him, he makes good movies.
The theater I was in, it was packed, and who's kidding who? This could be his last movie. Like, come on, just give him like a few more screens,
right?
Particularly ones that I can ride my bike to.
Yeah. All right. Well, cool. That's one that it feels like one that I will catch on cable at some point a couple of years from now. But who knows? What did we?
British Baking Show and football. Speaking of which, let's do that.
And a bunch of football. I don't think we really consumed too much other stuff. Our youth sports season has come to its merciful conclusion, so we will, in theory, have a little bit more time.
I won't. I still have school
around here to do stuff and make stuff and otherwise interact with the culture in different ways. Abe, have you got anything else for us tonight?
Nope.
Well, I guess that's all we've got for you tonight then, and we will talk to you next time.
Later.
Instead of my usual outtakes or side conversations that I include at the end of the show here, I'm going to present the essay that I wrote ahead of the 2020 election called How to Vote. The Music Man, the 1962 movie based on the 1957 Broadway musical, begins with con man Harold Hill on the run from people he has cheated. He arrives in River City, Iowa, and proceeds to swindle the fearful and gullible townsfolk of real America. He charms the librarian, the only reasonably intelligent person in town, by seducing her with a pickup artist's rapiness and the arrogance that he can set to rights whatever is wrong with anyone she cares about. He does this so that she won't expose his con, because she is the only person in town smart enough to figure him out. Donald Trump is bad. 4.5 years after I last used that sentence to start another essay about human defeat, it remains largely undisputed, and among the least controversial statements about our current reality that a person can utter. His supporters know that he is bad, and most readily admit the plain fact. His badness, a source of claimed, anyway, moderate chagrin to some, a delightful cudgel to others. His most ardent supporters delight in his awfulness. He's a piece of shit, you say. Look around, they say, at this toilet. It has always been a toilet. I have thought about the trumpeting so much these last 5 years. It has dominated me. It is so many different sorts of my least favorite things, a cascading pile-up of human failure and dismay and shame, on both sides, on many sides. It's hard to imagine a culture-wide phenomenon like it that isn't also of biblical or world war or natural disaster proportion. I haven't been able to look away. Not from the person at the center of it, not from the people reacting to it, performing their agreement or reflecting his. It has mostly been a waste. I have learned nothing because there was never anything to learn. There is only so much to learn from reflex beyond the fact of its existence. Practically all that remains of politics is disgust. Trump is the most disgusted American still, 4 years after he rose to what was once considered the apex of individual human power. All that he can muster is disgust. We put the least imaginative, incurious person at the center of our collective attention, and he didn't know what to do besides what he had always done, perform his disgust in service of his need. It would be easily recognized as a cruelty against him if he weren't already so broken as to have relished every moment of it, or if it were not, primarily, a sin against ourselves. And so much of what remains of the rest of us, who aren't him, is just disgust too. If you have a side, there is little doubt that you have recently expressed your disgust. It is imperative, in times like these, to express disgust as a signifier of personal and group identity. If you're not disgusted, you are not paying attention. If you don't have a side, you're no doubt disgusted with the whole charade, the circus, the shit show, all of it extracting from you a visceral reaction, like a baby sucking on a lemon. Trump flatters you with his awfulness. He says, "You're so smart, you can do the work of justifying how bad I am." He says, "You're so smart, you can tell how awful I am by the feeling in your stomach, by the pulsing in your neck, by the words you can't even muster." In The Music Man, when Harold Hill's fraud is exposed, he can't bring himself to run away. He realizes that the love he has cultivated for himself in the librarian, this instrument he has manipulated, he loves her back, this sucker, this reflection of his awful genius. She is a living, breathing testament to his accomplishment. How could he abandon such a thing? In the end, when he ought rightfully be strung up by the people he has conned, at the moment of something resembling justice, Harold Hill is saved. At the end of The Music Man, Harold Hill is saved when the locals are transformed from a bad but enthusiastic rabble into a brilliant and spectacular marching band. The source of this metamorphosis is not their practice or their hard work, because Harold Hill has convinced them that they need not even pick up their instruments to get better. They need only imagine that they can do it. Imagine it they do, and they are transformed, resplendent and accomplished and marching in perfect time. Harold Hill is redeemed. He gets the girl. The townspeople get what they paid for. Because The Music Man is a story, because it is, first and foremost, unreal, they get what they deserve. In their own minds, anyway, in this little town in heartland America, the fantasy all-encompassing. The fantasy is all that matters. It is easier for us to see through Trump. We know he's bad. He lacks the imagination and wit and really even the desire to convince you otherwise. You don't even have to think about it, really. He has made it very easy for you. He's not asking you to judge him otherwise. He's just asking you to imagine that no one else is any better, to imagine that everyone besides you is just like he is. Hucksters and frauds, disgusting, small, broken. He's asking you what you paid for. He's asking you what you deserve. This is not politics, the fact of it happening in a political context notwithstanding. This is humans telling a very old story, the easiest story, a story of reflex and despair, the story of how we are disgusted. I won't pretend to be exempt. I am not above it. Donald Trump was everything I hated about this country long before 2015. He still is, of course, and more so than ever. A clown and a fraud who was constantly rewarded for a lifetime of repeated failures because he insisted that his failures were actually great successes. The worst American. The most American. Donald Trump, a man who walked naked down the middle of the street, insisting not that we see and admire his clothes, because we all know he's naked. We can all see it. None of us are really that deluded. What he wants us to see is his shamelessness. What he's counting on is not that you'll see the absurdity of his naked delusion, but the sham of everyone else's clothes. We made him the actual president once. What have we paid for indulging this reflex? What do we deserve for letting the bile rise unbidden and being consumed by it? A story of reflex and despair, of how we are disgusted.
The proceeding was created with 100% human content.